are now inside the National Museum of Natural History, Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. And this is a display I helped Smithsonian Education Department and exhibits work on, highlighting the work done by ARS and APHIS and the Washington State Department of Agriculture on the detection and hopefully eradication of the non-native Northern Giant Hornet, Vespa mandarinia. This is a major pest of honeybee. Any social insect becomes a prey item for this giant hornet. We're concerned, obviously, in the United States because these hornets attack our bees, reduce our honey production, reduce our ability to pollinate crops. And it's important to always be recognizing when a non-native is here and what kind of impact they might have on the environment.
Back in late 2019, a rather large, bright orange and black hornet was sighted for the first time in the Pacific Northwest. Compared to a typical honeybee found in the United States, this hornet is huge, roughly 2 inches in length. Its head alone is almost as large as the honeybee. Officials who found the first specimens called ARS research entomologist Matt Buffington to help identify something they haven't seen before in the United States.
I'm told on the phone, be aware that this specimen's on its way, and that's pretty rare when they call you. So I'm like, okay, this is important. All research is important, but it seems like this might be even more important.
Buffington gets calls all the time to identify insects. That's one of his primary jobs. You see, the United States receives thousands of shipments every day from all over the world, including clothes, cars, materials, and food. It's easy for insects from other countries to hitch a ride on a shipment container and make its way here, where it could become an invasive insect. USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, or APHIS, they check shipment containers for these hitchhikers. And when they find something they can't identify, they call Buffington. This is critical because non-native insects can wreak havoc on our crops. Just look at the brown marmorated stink bug or the spotted lanternfly. In this case, Buffington received a call about a possible predator to the honeybee.
So I get the specimen, I pin it, I put a label on it, and then I go get the collection and bring the drawer into my office to compare my unknown Vespa with the determined Vespas. And sure enough, it matches up species-wise with Vespa mandarinia. But this is where the power of collections come in. I started looking at the specimens we have, which is a few hundred. Not a single one was from North America. They were all from Asia. And it's very unlikely that a species whose adults are as big as Vespa mandarinia would have escaped detection in North America. So right off the bat, I now understood why people were calling and making sure I got the specimen, because it was very clear this thing had not been recorded in the United States before.
Buffington identified the specimen as Vespa mandarina, the common name being Asian giant hornet. It was later renamed the Northern Giant Hornet. And this hornet wasn't just an enemy of our most common honeybees. It could literally massacre entire honeybee colonies.
The hornet is a social insect predator. Its goal is to exploit the larval bodies inside the bee hive. It's not actually interested in adult bees. It's interested in adult bees from the standpoint that it must exterminate them all in order to remove whatever larvae they want. First, a scout locates a suitable nest to attack. She marks that nest and flies back to her own nest and recruits her sisters to come with her on this raid, if you will. When they arrive, they elicit an alarm from the bees. The bees now detect that there is an invader. The bees elicit their response, which is a mass emergence to attack a would-be predator. This is exactly what the hornets want, because the hornets are waiting for them, and as they emerge from their nest, they fly up underneath them, grab them with their legs, often do kind of a really neat acrobatic barrel roll and decapitate them all at the same time in one move. And 10 to 12 hornets can eliminate the entire contents of the adults of a bee nest, leaving corpses all over, literally all over the place. So you can imagine if you're a beekeeper, it's probably one of the more terrifying things to see. And then they go in and take all the larvae. They fly back, they macerate the larvae, which means grind it up, and then they feed it to their own larvae.
If the Northern Giant Hornet were ever to establish here in the United States, it could wipe out billions of honeybees who are critical to our agro-ecosystem. Soon after the first specimen was found, local officials received multiple reports of sightings of this large hornet. Federal and state agencies scoured the Pacific Northwest and spotted the hornets, but they couldn't find the nests. Former ARS researcher Jacqueline Serrano worked with the Washington State Department of Agriculture to locate a hive of hornets. They actually did this by capturing a single hornet, subduing it, tagging it with an antenna, and then tracking its path. The hornet led the team straight to its nest, which interestingly wasn't on a tree branch, but rather inside a tree trunk. One hive, and some of its residents, were sent here to the Smithsonian for further investigation by Buffington and his staff. A large display was also set up inside the Smithsonian, so the general public could see where they live, how large they are, and how they destroy honeybees. Honeybees here in the U.S. can't protect themselves or their hives from the Northern Giant Hornet, but Buffington pointed out that native bees in Asia, they know how to defend their hives.
Apis cerana is the Asian honeybee, and Apis cerana co-evolved with Vespa mandarinia. Apis cerana has a defensive technique that can actually detect when the hornet is in their nest, and they immediately elicits a response that the bees must eliminate this scout before the scout has a chance to go back and bring help to start the battle. So what Apis cerana workers do inside the nest is they begin to pile on top of the hornet, kind of like a dog pile, but a bee pile, and they start beating their wings very fast. They use these wing beatings to generate massive amounts of muscle activity in their thorax. This actually puts off heat, and they literally cook the hornet alive. Once the hornet is dead, they eject it from the nest, and it never has a chance to report back to its nestmates.
It's interesting that they must have learned this over generations, this defense mechanism that we haven't learned yet.
Right, and it's not a learned behavior. We have to be careful taking more human concepts and applying them to nature. This is a classic case of natural selection. Whatever species came before Apis cerana that did not have the ability to defend itself, they're no longer with us. The ones that were able to detect it and were able to defend themselves, they're the ones who survived. In the case of Apis mellifera, it never had this challenge. It's never faced it before, so it could go extinct in North America if Vespa mandarinia was allowed to run rampant.
Buffington has access to over 1,000 different species of bees and hornets in this massive insect collection here inside the Smithsonian, including Apis mellifera, a descendant of Europe, which is now the most common honeybee in the United States. The Smithsonian keeps them in airtight drawers, which are themselves in steel cabinets, all of which is in a temperature-controlled space. How do you keep the bodies from deteriorating?
So insects are unique in that they're chitinous, which is an extremely stable carbon chain. If you keep them dry is very critical, and cool, and in the dark. There's no telling how long they'll last. They just don't decompose. The internals will. In certain kind of fatty insects, like really big moths, they have to be treated very carefully because they will like exude oil over time. But the hard things like beetles, hornets, they basically don't decompose. Just you keep them pest-free and moisture-free. That's one of the critical things about this collection is it's a long-standing, established collection that has the infrastructure to take care of something like this. It's no accident. It looks amazing.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work went into that. And that's the beautiful relationship between ARS and the Smithsonian is they help provide the infrastructure ARS needs to keep a collection like this, and we help Smithsonian by curating it. It's a wonderful symbiotic relationship.
Back to the Northern Giant Hornet. Buffington keeps close tabs on the search for new nests, and fortunately, none have been discovered since 2021. However, researchers continue to scour the Pacific Northwest for new sightings, because just one nest can cause massive destruction and lead to bigger problems across the U.S.
You can't turn your back on these things, because if one nest survived, if there were 96 queens in here, any one nest can have that many queens, and each one of those can start their own colony. So you can do the numbers, and it's pretty scary.
Tune in for our new episode next week, where we dive into the microbiome of a bee and see if good health really starts in the gut.